Here we are. I don't know about you, but I'm currently watching the Canadiens and the Lightning, but we have some Vancouver Canucks conversations to dive into that I think a lot of people had been passively curious about. Don't get me wrong, it's not like people were sweating bullets trying to figure out what was happening here, but it was a pretty common question that I did see get brought up in Canucks-related circles. The question at hand: what the hell happened to Evander Kane? Where was this guy during the Canucks' end-of-season press conferences? Why did he not make any appearances? And what happened to this dude? Was it really just a case of, Evander Kane played most of the season for Vancouver, he ended up getting his 1,000th game, he ended up getting his silver stick presented to him by the team, and then he just disappeared. And during the Canucks post-season end-of-year press conferences, you had a number of guys stepping up to the plate and talking to the media. Of course, Jim Rutherford was there. Patrick Allvin was not. He was already fired at this stage. But you had Tom Willander, Sasson, Bouillon, Atu Ratu, Tolopilo, Niels Höglander, Elias Pettersson, Hedel, Rossi, Ogren, Carlson, Douglas, Joseph DeBrusk, Forbort, O'Connor, Bluger, Lankinen, Marcus Pettersson, Philip Pronik, Elias Pettersson, Demko, Besser. You had all the main dudes and then some, but no Evander Kane. Now, Kane, obviously we acknowledge the fact that his contract is set to expiring later this year. By the time free agency opens up, the guy's probably going to be a free agent, and there isn't really any projection that says that Evander Kane is going to come back. So there was this idea floating around. It was like, hey, did the guy literally just say, "Peace out, buddy, I'm done with this hockey team"? Well, we have our answer. Leave it to Rick Dhaliwal to go out there with the scoop earlier this morning. He said, for those asking why Evander Kane didn't meet with the media on Friday, Kane had his exit meeting with Patrick Allvin, Jim Rutherford, and Adam Foote earlier last week, before the team left for the final 2 road games. He also did a medical exit after the team returned from the trip. Now, that doesn't directly answer why the guy wasn't present at the Canucks media availabilities after the season concluded, but it does give a little bit more background. The guy had already checked himself out. He took the keys to the hotel room, went up to the front desk, had his interviews, did the process to check out, and then he packed his bags and he left. That's essentially what happened here. It's kind of funny because there are folks on the Canucks subreddit that are like, oh, that doesn't really answer the question. The question is, why didn't he show up? Saying that he had his exit meeting last week and that he did a medical exit does not answer the question as to why he didn't show up to the press conference. And while I do acknowledge that that does make sense, it's like, come on, man. Like, the answer's right there. He's checked out. He's done. Everything it seems like he needed to do was already done, at least internally, and Evander Kane made the choice to not show up at the press conferences where you can say there is a duty, there's a responsibility, you're a pro athlete, that's your business. One of the things you have to do as a professional athlete is talk to the people that broadcast the sport that employs you. So there is a duty, and it does seem like Evander Kane just decided not to fulfill it. That's the answer there. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not defending the guy. But I'm just saying, I personally don't really get going after Dhaliwal for this update. A lot of people are like, oh, Dhaliwal just repeats everything that the agents tell him, and he just yells at us all the time, which I do think, even if that's true, there's still some juicy info to be taken in from these updates. And besides, Evander Kane, I think a lot of us want to forget about the fact that he even was a Vancouver Canuck this entire season. He was a bet that did not end up working out. This season, especially towards the end, there already were a bunch of issues with Evander Kane in the lineup. The fact that he was taking away minutes from younger players, the fact that he wasn't really that good. Now, don't get me wrong, it could have been worse, but we'll save that conversation for later in the video. Evander Kane was a roadblock that didn't really do any of the things that we had thought he'd be able to do. Yeah, sure, he fought somewhat, But he wasn't like the Pettersson bodyguard that a lot of us thought he would be able to be when he was acquired from Edmonton for that 4th-round pick. An acquisition that, by the way, helped Edmonton save some significant dollars on this season's worth of their cap. And then it was so obvious towards the end of the year that Adam Foote and Evander Kane, the only reason the guy was getting played was because the Canucks wanted him to reach that 1,000 game mark, and then after he would breach it, then it's like, all right, well, there's no reason to play you anymore. You're hurt, right? Let's just say you're hurt, and then we'll keep you off. And that's exactly what happened. It's why the guy ended up not joining the Canucks in that road trip, and he did his exit interviews early, and then he just decided to leave. It was a very anticlimactic finish to an anticlimactic acquisition in the first place. I'll admit it, man. Like, I've said this throughout the course of the season, but I was a very big believer in what Evander Kane was going to be able to do with the Vancouver Canucks. I was pretty optimistic in the video that we made earlier last year when the Canucks acquired the guy. I was like, yeah, this guy was actually well beloved in Edmonton. He had improved his career. He improved his hockey playing ability. Despite the injuries and despite the time off, he was able to be an effective player for the Oilers, and they were sad to see him go. You would think that Oilers fans would be happy to see him leave because, oh, we're saving some money and we're getting our draft pick back, but no. The biggest sentiment that I saw from Oilers fans was, oh man, sucks that he's gonna leave. Vancouver, y'all got a good one. And a lot of Canucks fans were on the opposite side of the spectrum. Wait a minute, we got Evander Kane? Why? He's old and he has all these issues off the ice, and there was already a culture problem with the Canucks with Miller and everything else, and now we're talking about bigger culture problems and toxicity and locker room cancers and whatever, and Evander Kane is not at the forefront of that conversation. What I also find funny about the whole situation is just how obvious it was that Vancouver wanted to get Kane to that 1,000 game mark, and then they just totally forgot about the guy after. But again, that's probably fine. Evander Kane, at the end of the day, scored some goals, maybe not as many as he could have, but he was there. He took some dumb penalties and had some drama with people that he was taking pictures with and hanging out with. At the end of the day, though, I will say, it could have been worse. Like, you review everything that Evander Kane had gone through in Winnipeg and in Buffalo and especially in San Jose, all the off-ice issues that were present throughout the course of his career. This Vancouver stint where nothing happened and he took some pictures with some interesting individuals, that was like the worst of it. It could have been a lot worse if we are being honest here. Let's just be grateful that it wasn't, really. And now the Vancouver Canucks can slowly get past this element of their season. Evander Kane, not great. Local guy coming back. Oh, he's going to be inspired because he's in a contract year. Unfortunately, he was playing for the worst team in the NHL by a long shot, and he was not good enough to dig them out of that hole and bring them up to better fortunes. With that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Evander Kane and his unofficial departure from the Vancouver Canucks? The truth has been revealed, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.